Hi friends, this is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Critical Role. And I'm going to explain, I recently got a comment, and they're like, hey man, all you do is nitpick and complain about CR. And I don't believe that's true. So first of all, I'm a Dungeons & Dragons commentator, right? So I don't really, people are like, why do you even care, man? Why do you care about Critical Role? If you don't like them, don't watch them. And I think I want to dig into this. Okay, so first of all, my primary care is not Critical Role. My primary care is Dungeons & Dragons. But right now, Dungeons & Dragons is Critical Role. Critical Role is massively impacting the rules, the IRL lore, and the setting lore of Dungeons & Dragons. It is literally like braided into the success of Dungeons & Dragons. This is not, So I want to clarify my stance on Critical Role. So people are like, you don't like Critical Role. That's not completely correct. I have a nuanced opinion on Critical Role, and I want to define it here. All right. I don't like to watch Critical Role. I don't. Okay. Now, in many ways, why? One primary reason: the 4-hour game. I despise the 4-hour game, and if you run a 4-hour game, I think you are foolish. I think you don't know what you're doing when it comes to entertainment. I don't think you know what it means. I don't think you know anything about Dungeons & Dragons. I don't think you know anything about entertainment. I don't think you know much about humans. I think the 4-hour game is the biggest problem Dungeons & Dragons has to defeat right now, right? And so Critical Role runs 4-hour games. Absolute garbage narrative structure, absolute garbage identity structure. It's terrible. It is absolutely abominable. And for that reason, I do not like to watch Critical Role. Do I watch Critical Role? Yes, I've watched all of Critical Role. Why? Because I have to. I have to watch Critical Role to understand Dungeons & Dragons. I am a Dungeons & Dragons historian and a Dungeons & Dragons presentorian and a Dungeons & Dragons futurian. Like, I am highly involved in the history, present, and future of Dungeons & Dragons, right? I follow it. I'm part of it. And I refuse to be ignorant of Dungeons & Dragons, right? There are, I don't know how to change the oil in my car. I'm ignorant of car mechanics, right? I refuse to be ignorant of Dungeons & Dragons. And anyone who ignores Critical Role is ignorant of Dungeons & Dragons today. You simply don't know what Dungeons & Dragons is, because there is no Dungeons & Dragons today without Critical Role. There simply isn't. If you think there is, you're wrong, right? Like, Critical Role has transformed Dungeons & Dragons. So I don't like to watch Critical Role. Does that mean I don't like Critical Role? No, that's absolutely wrong. Do I like Critical Role? Yes. And why? Well, Critical Role has massively benefited the Dungeons & Dragons community in many, many, many ways. I'll just list one today. Critical Role, starting in 2015, massively increased the public profile of Dungeons & Dragons. It literally made Dungeons & Dragons more of a household name. And it ensured that Dungeons & Dragons would remain a household name. And that's not a small thing. When they started that in 2015, we were coming off of 6 years, 2008 to 2014. We were coming off of 6 years of absolutely brutal downslope for Dungeons & Dragons, to the point where Dungeons & Dragons almost went out of business, right? They almost handed the entire, Dungeons & Dragons milieu to Pathfinder. People hated Dungeons & Dragons. Mike Merle saved Dungeons & Dragons with the rule set, and then Critical Role used that rule set to make Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition the most successful setting the game has ever had, and that would never have happened without Critical Role. I love Critical Role because if you look at them in total, their benefit to the D&D community, they have far more given more to Dungeons & Dragons than they've taken. Okay, so I love Critical Role. I hate to watch them. I do watch them as a chore, right? It's a chore I must do to understand Dungeons & Dragons. So I wanted to clarify that. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.